say thank you, fuck you, bye. Keep your jazz hands off my TV screen. He's had enough of Marcus Stump, the Bucks, and Omega. We're all a bunch of fools. Try your wrist lock, hip toss, cut out all your flipping flopping. For fuck's sake, all of you tag teams, learn the fucking rules. James E.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another thrill-packed, exciting, scintillating episode of the Jim Cornette Experience. I'm Jim Cornette, and today on the program, we're going to talk about fights in Texas, wrestlers on Mars, an impeached asshole. We'll talk to Dr. Tom Pritchard on training the modern generation and the Wednesday Night Wars. One show dunked, the other show drowned, ladies and gentlemen. And to join me in all this fine conversation, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's the proprietor of the French Toast Chateau, and he once gave swimming lessons to Mary Jo Kopechne, your friend and mine, the great Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here for another scintillating episode of the Jim Cornette Experience.
The Mary Jo Kopechne line may be too esoteric for this crowd. I was keeping with the nautical motif, but it's also a politically charged time in our country. Combine the two of those, what do you get? Bupkis, apparently from you.
The nautical motif of this episode, I guess. Well, one dunked, one drowned, I guess so.
Yeah, yes, because the show was on a boat and blah, blah, blah. The love boat, you know, the Captain Steubing jokes. I figured if Captain Steubing could get on national TV, I could fucking do a Mary Jo Kopechne line on a goddamn podcast. But anyway, there is a new motto that I'm going to live my life by that I heard in watching some of the impeachment coverage. And I didn't even catch because I was listening while I was doing some other work, but I can't even attribute it to the right person. But when you walk past something substandard and do nothing about it, it becomes the new standard. Of course, in this case, they were talking about a piece of shit like Donald Trump actually being the president of the United States. But it brought up, to my mind at least, I guess I'm just a crusader, Brian. I'm just a valiant, caped crusader fighting for seriousness and justice in pro wrestling, because when I just can't take the check. I just can't just bite my tongue. When I walk past something substandard in an industry that I have devoted much of my life to and cared so much about and do nothing about it, it becomes the new standard, and I feel I must do something about it. I must call out outlaw mud show bullshittery where it exists.
No! Let everyone have fun! The business has evolved! You're old!
Thank you, Mrs. Spencer.
I hope you die in the next 32 seconds, you and your homosexual Brian.
Oh, God, we should actually, for the 30th anniversary of The Old Lady, in honor of Dennis Corluzzo, we should release the Old Lady DVD, re-release it, or the CD with the proceeds going to some form of charity, possibly for Alzheimer's or whatever it was that she might have had.
It's on YouTube.
Is it on YouTube? Old Lady's on YouTube.
I put it on YouTube a long while back with some custom Travis Heckle artwork of an old lady, I believe, with you tied to a chair while she yells. But there may be some new listeners who have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, and this is a good time then to tell them to go check out the YouTube channel, isn't it?
That's right. Well, that would actually be on the old channel, the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube channel. It's in the archives.
Well, check out both of them. The Arcadian Vanguard channel for some of the old back archives and the official Jim Cornette channel on YouTube. And subscribe while you're at it. It's free. It costs nothing. It's good for you. It promotes hair growth. So subscribe to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. And while we're on the subject, a figures update, an update on my figure, so to speak. We said last week on the program, I'm not going to go into such explicit detail as I did about how long it took and the delays, etc. However, the official Legends figure of Jim Cornette from Figures Toy Company is back in stock at jimcornette.com. Cornette's Collectibles for a limited time only, because as we mentioned, we thought we were ordering for like the 4 months it used to take to get these things. It took over a year. So there are now, I said there were going to be less than 500. Now, as a week later, there are barely over 400. of the original version of my Legends figure available for the calendar year of 2020. And when these are gone, they're going to be gone till at least next year. And there is supposed to be a different colored variant that will be coming out in a few months, I guess, because those are taking even longer. And now there's going to be limited in number as well. So get your tickets early and get your figures even quicker. We do have all the orders as of Wednesday, January 22nd, except the internationals, take a couple days longer, are in the mail, I believe, at this point. And except for a few stray Mid-Atlantic film sets, got to make more DVD sets again. But also Burger Towels are back in action, ladies and gentlemen. Burger Towels once again available. They were sold out before Christmas. My best-selling graphic novel from IDW, Behind the Curtain, remains a brisk seller. The only place you can get autographed Behind the Curtains for $19.95, for fuck's sake. I just give this shit away, is at JimCornette.com. The only place you can get those autographed. And also, while I'm talking about it, the Houston Wrestling Spectacular, 4 hours of classic Houston wrestling from the Sam Houston Coliseum and the archives of Paul Bosch, including the 1960s full-length confrontation between Wild Bull Curry and Johnny Valentine that is the stuff of legend and is a myth-making performance by both men. All at JimCornette.com. I await you trying to give me a nervous breakdown again by spending your money wisely with Cornette's Collectibles and sending me to running to Bree at the post office in a state of disarray.
Have they figured out yet at the post office how much money you're making?
They haven't figured out how much I'm making, but I've told them how much I'm spending there.
Oh, they know.
Just to make sure they're aware of that.
What was their reaction? I mean, that's a...
Well, Bree told me I almost paid her salary last year. So I'm doing a service also to keep the postal service in business for the good of all of us. I'm a public servant. I'm here at your disposal, ladies and gentlemen. I service you at every given opportunity. Anyway, we got a letter. I got an email that brought up a distant memory that I had not thought of, a story that I haven't told. And boy, those things are rare these days. So I thought we'd capitalize on this and ride this for all it's worth. David wrote me. It's a kind of, I'll edit some of the email, but talks about the fact that he attended a show in North Texas. It was a junior high school gym in North Texas back in your early days with world-class wrestling. It was a great show and about 1,200 people attended. A melee broke out during the contest you were managing, and mid-match you were attacked by an angry fan sitting at ringside. I'll tell you why I remember this incident now here in a couple seconds. But David says you defended yourself admirably by smacking the nut job with your tennis racket and getting in several well-aimed kicks. Seconds later, our principal, a 250-pound ex-college football star, came out of nowhere and executed a perfectly devastating form tackle on the unfortunate, unruly idiot. The first thing that hit the gym floor was the miscreant's gourd. The principal then put a perfect chokehold on the attacker. The principal was then joined by 2 or 3 sheriff's deputies. Yeah, it continued to escalate, who handcuffed the now groggy would-be attacker and threw him headfirst into 2 double steel doors. You know those exit doors in a high school gym with the bars across them? The double door thing?
Yeah.
Head first, boy, boom, and they flew open. Then out into the parking lot, and David says, and into a squad car. Actually, it may not be quite accurate, as we'll talk about in a second. But here's one thing that tickled me about this email. The unique part of this story is on your 3rd or 4th swing, your solid gold diamond ring in the shape of the state of Texas flew out into the crowd and was lost. Wait a minute. I'll tell you. I believe the ring was ultimately returned to you, ? After that same principal did an extensive search. Those of us in attendance knew even then you would forever be a force to reckon with in professional wrestling. The matches were great that night, and the unplanned non-kayfabe ? Mid-match riot was a classic. As a 15-year-old in attendance, I learned you, Jim Cornette, could handle yourself well in a hostile environment, and there were people in the world like the principal, Mr. Rosenberg, I didn't want to fuck with. He's retold the story to his kids and now his grandkids. Hope this jogs your memory. David, thank you. It did. I have to clarify a couple of... Here's what happened. I remember this because in Dallas in World Class, they had such a small crew. I mean, everybody was always at the Sportatorium and on television or whatever, but when they would run these spot shows, as we've talked about, if you were in Corsicana, Texas, the other night somebody might, or same night, another show might be in Seguin, Texas, down south, or just wherever. They would run on the Thursdays and sometimes the Tuesdays or whatever. They'd run 2 events in the same night, split crew. So the spot shows at these high schools would start out with a single match like Kelly Kaniski against Brian Adias, right? And then they'd have a captain's match, which was a nice way of saying that 2 guys out of the tag match, either the Midnight Express or the Fantastics, had to work twice, because the captain's match was the supposed captain of the team. Like Dennis Condrey would work one night against Bobby Fulton, the next night Bobby Eaton would work against Tommy Rogers. So they'd vary it up so it wasn't same guys being put upon constantly, but they would have a captain's match. Then they would have some 2 matches or a tag match with some combination of Kevin and Kerry against Chris Adams, Gino Hernandez, or the one-man gang. And somebody, maybe they'd have Kerry versus Gino in one town and Chris versus Kevin in the other town, or Gang versus Kerry in one town. And there was always another babyface floating around, like Hercules Hernandez or Iceman Parsons or whatever, and another heel like a Rip Oliver or, whatever the case. So you could, basically that was the fucking crew, right? And they'd always put our tag match on last, even though the Von Erich versus whoever was billed as the main event, because that way they could leave early. And then they were saying, well, we're giving you a break in between the match you wrestle earlier and the last match you can rest up, right? Anyway, now that we've established this, one thing was for sure, I was going to appear twice every night because of the captain's match and then the tag match. So generally, sometimes we would do something where the heel would slip over in the captain's match just to have more interest in the tag match, where ultimately the Fantastics, the baby faces, would win. But most of the time we'd put them over twice because what the fuck, it's a spot show and why get any heat? But one of the standard finishes we had for these singles matches, especially when the dressing rooms were separate, you couldn't talk to each other, was that I would jump up on the apron of the ring when the referee would maybe get an inadvertent thumb in the eye. And I would jump up on the apron of the ring as Bobby Fulton staggered over to me, and I'd grab him, and Dennis would run. And right at the last second, Bobby would move out of the way, and Dennis would boot me in the stomach or nail me, and I'd drop off the apron, and Bobby would roll Dennis up. Referee would recover 1, 2, 3, and then Bobby'd roll out on the floor and leave the heels in the ring to bitch. People would be, oh, fuck you, right? So this happens. But I must have, when we went out there, there was one more thing that came into play here. Did I ever tell you about the shitty spot show ring, Brian, that World Class Wrestling had, that on some of these little spot shows around the Dallas Metroplex, they would use this little shitty ring?
You didn't, and I was actually going to ask you about the ring, because I know the ring in the Sportatorium was notoriously awful. I was going to say, what were the spot show rings like in World Class?
Okay, well, I've never seen a ring like this before that they used it in some of the shows around the DFW area just because they had a guy that would haul it with a fucking trailer, right? The Sportatorium ring was hard and didn't have any give and was all mildewed from all those years and all the sweat and everything and blah, blah, blah. But it looked good for television. You didn't realize, that the guys were killing themselves on it. But this spot show ring they used, it was a smaller ring, like a 16-foot ring, but I've never seen a ring built like that. I think the guy literally built it in his backyard. There was no apron on the ring. And I will explain this. What makes the